Thank you, worship team. And I've been meaning to say this for a while. And Christian in his dad's shoes. He's about to be dad any day now. But I'm going to highlight it before he's off the platform. And because I keep forgetting. He got his dad's shoes before the baby got here. He's ready. Sam, we know, is definitely ready. And man, thank y'all for being here with us at the Life Church. I'm going to highlight a couple other things real quick before we get into the actual message. And the Joshua is foreshadowing where we're going today. But this was an awesome week. I loved, in hindsight, the picture of how much ministry we were able to do to high schoolers. On aside from youth on Wednesday and all the stuff that happens at youth every Wednesday. And with Pastor Kenny, our new volunteers, amazing people, and all that. But then Thursday morning, I got to go to a school and speak to some high schoolers about faith after high school and that kind of thing. And then Friday morning, TLCA, across the parking lot that we're connected with, had a Black History Month event Friday morning, and our apprentices were here. Pastor Kenny, our youth pastor, was here, and they were here 7 a.m. to serve the school and the students and the parents. It was a really awesome morning. But I just got to say, I was just so proud being here with them of all the work that they did. And we got Amaya over here that was on keys. We got JJ that was doing call to worship. And we got Moe over here, and Pastor Kenny's in the back. And let's just give them a real awesome round of applause and just say thank you. And it was just so awesome just seeing them connect, our own teenagers from the school here, and then even younger students that we don't aren't as connected with in the same kind of way, but they knew our apprentices, and it was just really awesome seeing them serve the school. And so I just want to highlight them. By the way, they like to eat, and so if you ever want to take them to lunch or bless them, JJ definitely will never say no. And I knew it was 7 a.m. I was like, okay, I'm going to treat them. So I did pick up breakfast for them and bless them. So, but anyway, I share these wins with teenagers because honestly, even today's message, which may be a very simple message, but may yet also be a good reminder for some of us that have been in the church for a while, and maybe something new for some of us that haven't. And but I was really having a conversation with one of our youth, and in the midst of that conversation, this message really just started to kind of come from that moment of talking to one of our young people in the church. And so my title today is Faith is Greater Than 10. And faith is greater than 10. We'll see what the 10 is, and but I'm not giving it away. You may get it as we kind of get into this story. I'll remind us again, faith is the movement toward the hope of the destination being transformed in love. 1 Corinthians 13:13. These three things are eternal. And so we've been focusing on these three things, yet also identifying what are the things that get in the way when we need to move. We need to move toward hope, but what are those things that become obstacles in the thing? And so I start with asking, where is your hope? Where was the Israelites' hope that we were talking about just a moment? Where was Moses' hope? Because that's who we're going to talk about today in Numbers chapter 13, old school, early in your Bible. And Numbers chapter 13 and verse 2, send out men to explore the land of Canaan, the land I am giving to the Israelites. Send one leader from each of the 12 Israelite ancestral tribes. The land I am giving. He promised this land even further back. We can find it even in Exodus, where God is making a promise unto his people. And we're getting a picture here. The Israelites have a hope of the promised land, the land flowing of milk and honey, a good place. And God is communicating this hope. How many is like, I need God to communicate so clearly a hope to me? Like I'm not sure. I might feel a little wandering sometimes, and so now some not all who wander are lost, but some of us wander intentionally. But sometimes we're like, hey, God, can you give me a little direction? Can I get a little hope here? I need to know what my destination looks like. And because sometimes we can kind of just find ourselves just moving. And movement is not always faith. And I think that's a dangerous thing. Sometimes we just think, we are just moving. And don't get me wrong, I am the kind of guy that I don't always do good with plans and projections and goals. I'm like, I just want to do the right thing and get the right result, right? And so sometimes I need to be reminded too that like sometimes we need to have that picture, because God has something for us, but sometimes we got to move to get it. Because I don't know about you, I don't live in my hometown anymore, so when my birthday rolls around, if I want my granny's banana pudding for my birthday, I got to go to my granny. My granny don't drive here, and I got to go home, or at least my hometown, and I got to go see my granny to get my banana pudding that I get every year on my birthday. By the way, if you love me, I appreciate it. Don't make me banana pudding right now. It's Lent. So we're fasting, so don't do that. But you plan a vacation, but yet all of a sudden it's not enough to just buy the tickets and then never go to the airport or ever get on a plane. You get a picture of the hope at the destination you want to go. Now you got to move in that the destination, toward that destination. But we also need to make sure that we got resources. That's that planning part that we don't always like. And we're digging into this story, and I'm going to give you plenty of story here in this Numbers chapter 13, but we are going to skip around. There's a lot of detail here. And I do like in chapter 17, it says, Moses gave the men these instructions as he sent them out to explore the land. Go north through that place into the hill country. See what the land is like and find out whether the people living there are strong or weak, few or many. See what kind of land they live in. Is it good or bad? Do the towns have walls, or are they unprotected like open camps? Is the soil fertile or poor? Are there many trees? Do your best to bring back samples of the crops you see. Go, all 12 of y'all. 12 spies get sent into the land to see, gather information. We need to assess the situation. God's promised it. We got to do our part. Let's assess the situation and see what it looks like on this. Why? Because sometimes, let's be real, I don't know about you, but there's a phrase, faith can be blind sometimes. But I think that's a dangerous place to be, that we would wander as if we have no vision. We may never be moving toward a hope. And so we don't want just a blind faith. We don't come in here just to get a blind faith, make you feel better, so go out and then do whatever and not know where you're going to go. We want to come in here and get a faith and a preparation of what God is doing in our lives, because he's got a calling for each and every one of us in our families, in our workplaces, in our communities, wherever it is, our kids' game, wherever we're going back to. And we need to be prepared for what the assessment is out there in that culture and community. And we come into this place, and he sends 12. I like that picture. I quote this, I believe old proverb says, if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, go with others. And that's a part of what we're focusing on today, is this picture of going with others. Moses sends 12 people. Proverbs 15:22 says, without counsel, plans fail, but with many advisors, they succeed. So Proverbs in this wisdom book is telling us, without plan, I don't always like Proverbs, by the way. Sometimes I feel a little convicted by Proverbs. I'm like, okay, Proverbs, you can just check yourself there a little bit. Back up off your high horse a little bit there, sir. And I'm like, I don't know if I'm quite ready for the wisdom. Like, you know what I mean? Without counsel, plans fail. You got to have counsel, and you got to have a plan. It's not just the counsel. It's the plan. What's your plan going into that parenthood? What's your plan going into that job? Maybe the job you want that you don't have yet, or the job you're getting or just got. What's your plan for that next stage of life? What's that plan? We were shopping yesterday. My wife and I had some date time, and so I drug her to the store I wanted to go to, and then she drugged me to the store she wanted to go to, and that's how our date time was before we went to lunch, where she wanted to go to lunch, and because that's what you do, you sacrifice. I'm just kidding. I definitely didn't hate it. But we were looking, and there was this shirt that I wanted, but it was up on the rack, and it was way up high. And I was just like, that's good. I'm not going to ask nobody. I'm not going to do nothing. I just won't buy it. I just won't get it. And my wife's like, oh, here's a pole. I'll just get it down, and I'll get all these other sizes down that are in the way to the size we want. And I'm sitting there like, oh my goodness, this is not their plan at this store. We're breaking some rules here, by the way. And sometimes I'm that rule breaker in the right circumstance and situation, but we're at the middle of the aisle. People are going to see me. They're going to notice me. I'm like, no. Don't, and she's just doing it, and I'm just standing there I felt like just a mannequin, just put things on my hand. And that's the thing, though. Sometimes there's something we want to attain, accomplish, or do in this life, and we need that person or persons that come alongside us and support us and bring what we need in these particular situations. We need people that help us move forward. Moses, the leader of the Israelites in this situation, leading them to victory, is not doing this work on his own. And how too often are we facing battles or trying to lead our families or trying to accomplish this thing, this new job idea, this new invention idea, and we're trying to do things on our own. We play it close to the chest and don't let anybody else know. What the Bible shows us over and time again is that we weren't meant to do this life alone from the very beginning of creation. And we think, oh, but that's just marriage, and what is this? No. Moses is empowering people in this situation. And sometimes we need people to help us physically. And sometimes we need people to help us mentally. And sometimes we need that physical help. You know, when moving day comes, if they're not strong, but they got a truck, they're still good, right? You know what I mean? You got that help. Numbers 13 and verse 27. This was their report to Moses. Oh, we entered that land you sent us to explore. And it is indeed a bountiful country, a land flowing with milk and honey. Here is the kind of fruit it produces. Show them the fruit. But, oh man, that biggest, smallest word in the Bible. Maybe not the smallest, if I think is probably even more important in that situation. But one of the biggest, smallest words, because when we say something positive and then say but, you've negated everything else that came before it, and nothing good comes after it. The people living there are powerful, and their towns are large and fortified. And we even saw giants there. It's so unfortunate how we still speak like this, and all of our experience, all of our education, all of our whatever. I still catch myself, and when this became evident to me at one time, how critical the word but is in the midst of how we use it, I catch myself. I cringe at myself so often when I say something, oh yeah, I love that person, but do I really love that person if I just negated the very fact that I love them with what I want to follow after that statement? Like the challenge that we say about all kinds of people, circumstances. God called me to that place, but are we going to negate the promise and power of God's word and what he's declaring to us by putting a but after that so we can put in our opinion instead? And there's a challenge there that we face, and I don't know about you, just because we're in the church doesn't mean we don't use the word but. And we so often, we project these contrasts of these positives and negatives, and this is the very statement in text that leads to a very infamous statement about being a grasshopper. If you've been in the church for some time, you know what I'm talking about, and we're going to get there, but not yet. What is your destination of hope? Where are you wanting to go? Where are you needing to get to? Are you desiring a movement of faith? And maybe that's the thing, is you're here today and you're even recognizing, like, the very fact that you're here was a picture of hope, maybe even a small picture. It absolutely was faith. It took faith to get up and get ready and come here. Some of you reluctantly to walk through the doors of a church, even to come into an atmosphere of worship, even because of the feelings and emotions that we are experiencing of feeling unworthy in these moments, and we're not sure what to even do, and we come into this place with a but. And in verse 32, so they spread this bad report about feeling weaker than the strength of the enemy that they perceived in this moment. It says, so they spread this bad report about the land among the Israelites. Next to them, we felt like grasshoppers. And that's what they thought too. we don't just take our perspective and recognize that's just the way I'm viewing things. We then take it and cast it onto other people and say, they must see me the same way I see me. They have the same vision. They didn't go talking to giants. They don't know what the giants are thinking in this situation, but they have projected this moment. There was a very ancient Greek slave philosopher, Epictetus, that said, men are disturbed not by things, but by the views which they take of them. I learned not a new concept, but a new phrase this week that I just happened to come across. And it's called effective realism. And effective realism is how our emotions affect our perspective. And the spies in this situation were experiencing emotions related to the fear that they had experienced in light of the enemy that they saw in the land that they were supposed to go to. And this enemy was creating emotions in the situation, and then the emotions led to the perspective they had. How often are we being led by our emotions in situations, in arguments, in offenses, and things gone wrong in whatever situation or thing that's taking place? And our emotions, it's not, our vision isn't true. It's why I say we were just praying an intercessory prayer. Pastor Narcisse wasn't here today, and so I was leading, and I prayed, forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors, whether they sinned against us or we just feel that they did. Because let's be real, sometimes it's just our feelings that made us think that we need to forgive somebody. There wasn't actually an offense, but my feelings were trampled on. And in those situations. And I get it. I get it with these people. Because our chemical brain, our human brain, wants to keep us alive while God is trying to lead us to live. And the spies, I feel for them to some degree. Like I've got to recognize, but I also got to recognize because sometimes I'm the 10 and not the 2. Sometimes I am one of the spies in the situation, and sometimes my emotions, my perspective, and my brain is just trying to keep me alive in this situation to not risk it and put myself out there. But God's saying, but on the other side of the fear you're experiencing, the lie that the enemy's telling you is a way of living, but you'll only know that it's a lie if you move towards it. And so often we allow the fear and the lie of the enemy and the situation to keep us cemented in place. They spent 40 days out there scoping the land, scoping the place, and assessing the situation. And then they come back and got stuck. And I look at the times of my life, those times that I was brave, those times I went on the mission trip, those times I did that outreach, those times I shared my faith with somebody, those times I did whatever thing, and how can I go and do something so amazing to come back and feel stuck? Sometimes I feel stuck. Sometimes, am I just being one of the spies? And I've kind of given it away ahead of time when I said the 10, and that's the thing. Faith is greater than 10. Faith has got to be greater than 10. Like sometimes I feel like one of the 10. I have emotions like one of the 10. I have fear like one of the 10. But my faith has got to be greater than the 10 that are experiencing, because the thing is, 12 went in, and 2 came back with the positive reports. And in Numbers chapter 14, verse 6, it says, 2 of the men had explored the land, Joshua, the son of Nun, and Caleb. They tore their clothing in the midst. We're skipping a lot of the drama. You go back and read this later and see all the drama unfolding and the back and forth and the gossip and the slander and all the negative report. And they tore their clothing, a sign of grief in this moment. And they said to all the people of Israel, the land we traveled through and explored is a wonderful land. And if the Lord is pleased with us, he will bring us safely into that land and give it to us. It is a rich land flowing with milk and honey. Do not rebel against the Lord, and don't be afraid of the people of the land. They are only helpless prey to us. And I love this. They have no protection, but the Lord is with us. Oh, they use the word but, but didn't contrast the positive and then go negative. They used it in the reverse and said, they have no protection, but the Lord is with us. I think, and maybe that's my confession right there, is when I catch myself saying but in the wrong way, that I need to come back and I think I need to correct myself, like put it in the right way and be like, oh, I can, this situation, but I just don't know if I can do it. I don't know. How about in that moment, but the Lord is with us. The Lord is with me. The Lord is with you. The Lord is with your family. The Lord is at your work. The Lord is in that place. The Lord is blessing your home. The Lord is providing and showing you a way to be a parent and love your kids and love your neighbor. And I need to take that and reframe that into a new perspective outside of the emotions of my fear. But that's the thing. Joshua and Caleb are the two speaking not only to the 10, not only to Moses, not only to Aaron, but all the Israelites. And there's a difference between whether we're being the 10 or being the 2 in this situation. And the question is then, who's with you on this journey of faith? Because some of us in this situation might identify with the Moses in these situations, and are we listening to the 10s or the 2s? Who's with you on this journey of faith, and who's against you on this journey of faith? Who is encouraging you toward hope that you have, and who is discouraging you toward the hope that you have? It may be like this. Who is saying how big your God is? And who is saying how big your enemy is? Because it's real easy in this world. Christians and non-Christians alike, we like to talk about how big our enemy is. You can turn on the news and see that real quick, talking about one party talking about the other, as if they're both not wrong, as if one is better than the other. One race talking about another race, one group of people talking about another group of people, as if we're not all God's children created in his image. We can easily turn on or listen to whatever it is, and we very much so often will be talking about how big our enemy is. And do you have people in your life talking about how big your God is? Because the 10 talked about giants and the 2 talked about God. They said, oh, there's an enemy, don't get me wrong, but I don't even care. I don't even care that they had walls as wide as the room. That it doesn't even matter in this situation, because it doesn't matter how big they are, how big their walls are, how big their city is, how big their armor is in this Bronze Age. None of it matters because of how big our God is. And he gave us a promise to go and get, and it's time to stand firm. 1 Corinthians 16:13, be on guard. Stand firm in the faith. Be courageous. Be strong. And do everything with love. Be courageous. And be strong. The 10 felt weak compared to the strength of the enemy. And the 10 spread fear, discouraging the Israelites. I like how Maxwell said this. He said, our attitude is not automatically good just because we belong to God. And sometimes we end up in church. We have conversations, and don't get me wrong, we come into our small groups and our women's group and our young adults and youth or whatever, and we have some of these conversations, and we're processing and we're struggling with life because life is hard, life is difficult, life is challenging. And sometimes, but we might even find ourselves sometimes, even within the church, that we find ourselves finding the 10 inside a small group instead of the 2. Just because you're in church and somebody has something to say doesn't mean it's the 2. Sometimes it can be the 10. Sometimes I got to manage and make sure I'm not being a 10, right? And so I confess that myself and making sure that I'm being a 2. And I think so. Just let's be real in the church. Sometimes we find the 10s in the church. And let's have some discernment. Let's have some awareness and sometimes and recognize that sometimes we're the Moses trying to lead the 10s and the 2s. And that's even the thing there. It doesn't mean we kick anybody out. And that's even the picture that God gives us. Because sometimes even the world society will say, just cut them off. cut them out of your life. Get rid of them. Kick them out the door. Now, you might need to have some boundaries, don't get me wrong, but the thing about Christianity and the church is even if you're here today and you feel like a 10, you're still welcome here. You're still a part of this family. You're just still stuck as a 10 and just in this moment. And maybe it's the overcoming fear of what you're facing in life, or maybe it's the culture in which you came up in. And you didn't even realize that your parents were 10s or your grandparents were 10s. And to move into a place of courage and strength, you're like, but that's not my household and the genealogy of which I came through. I came through a complaining family that we just complained about everything. It's a dangerous place. Our team is reading through one of my favorite book of all time, and one of the greatest books I believe ever written, called The Great Divorce by C.S. Lewis. And I even talked about in the book the difference between having a complaint and just becoming a complaint. I wonder where the 10 stood. What was the difference between them having an acknowledgement, a practical fear of what was on the other side of faith, of chance, of risk? Or did they just become the thing? So what about people? And this is why I wrestle with Proverbs 15:22. We go back to this. Without counsel, plans fail. But with many advisors, they succeed. But hold on a second. So in the story here in Moses, they do not go into the promised land. The people rebel through the work of the 10 in this situation. And it says, but with many advisors, they succeed. But Moses had many advisors. In this circumstance and situation, we see 12 men, a leader from each of the 12 tribes, were sent as spies and come back with a positive report as to what was there, but a negative perspective as to what the challenge was. It says with many advisors. But here's the thing. I even looked and made sure kind of how I was understanding, and I like how one of the definitions of advisors in this situation is problem solvers. And I add, not problem magnifiers. And there's a difference in the situation between a problem solver and a problem magnifier. And when I come back from this place, which of those am I being? Let me say it like this. 10 were problem magnifiers, where 2 were problem solvers. 10 saw circumstances greater than God, while 2 saw God greater than circumstances. 10 saw themselves as helpless, while 2 saw the enemy as helpless. 10 were reacting, while 2 were responding. 10 showed cowardice based on fear, and 2 showed courage rooted in faith. 10 had negative attitude, and 2 had a positive attitude. And 10 said no, while 2 said go. So who's telling you to go toward hope? Who are the 2s in your life? And I don't just mean the Enneagram 2s, although the Enneagram 2s will absolutely come along and help you too. If you know, you know. They'll come along and they'll serve and they'll help you in that situation. But who's telling you to go? Maybe it's not who's telling you to go. Maybe that's one part. Who's going with you? And we're going to get into this aspect in a moment, because sometimes we need the ones who tell us to go and we need the ones who do go. And they're both required and they're both necessary. Why? Because there's strength and then there's courage. And we're going to get into that. Who are you listening to? Sometimes we don't always realize in the moment. Sometimes we can think that we are positive. I can think that I'm a positive person. I remember one mission trip I was on, and all of a sudden we were in Guatemala and doing missions work on a short-term missions trip. And in the midst of this situation, we had gotten instruction that we were going to go to a night school to do a presentation of the gospel. And I was told, just on my own, I was just told, no script, no help, just share the gospel. Tell whatever you feel led to do. Just do whatever you feel led to do. No direction, no destination of hope. Just determine it. And I remember we left, and so they were going to do the festival, and so 2 teams left, and there was 2 night schools, and then we both ended up at the same night school for the situation, and we were at the wrong one. I'm like, oh, well, I guess we got it wrong. We might as well go back home. I was so nervous, so scared. And then we get to the right night school and we get to there and the doors are locked and we can't get in. And I'm like, oh, well, I guess we just missed our mark. We can't get it. We'll just go on back home. Like, I didn't even realize how much of a 10 I was being in this moment with my leader. Thankfully, I was a shut up 10. I was a quiet 10. I was a keep silent, don't let no one know you're a 10 situation. And better to keep silent and be thought of as a fool than to open one's mouth and remove all doubts. That's a phrase to live by. And in this moment, and then the next year, I'm in another country. And also now I'm the team leader. And I'm having to take a team into a prison, into neighborhoods, into markets. And now all of a sudden I'm having to be a Moses in this situation. And I got some 10s and 2s. And God's reminding me, remember when you were a 10. Be gracious. Don't listen to them. Don't empower the 10 to control the group. Don't allow a mob mentality to take over the situation because the mob is almost always wrong. And so often we allow a few to determine the many, and we allow a mob to determine what's taking place in this situation. Take the 10 with you quietly. Like just listen to their positive advice, but be weary of the buts. And Moses, he didn't make it to the promised land. The Israelites at this time did not follow faith and chose fear instead. And Moses gave in to the 10 and people disregarded the 2. But for us though, we should make a decision, and maybe some of us need to make a determination today that faith is greater than 10. Because 2 is greater than 10. And I know that's a math that doesn't work, but that's what I think God's math looks like sometimes. It's a math that doesn't make sense in the practical. And you're going to go around, you're going to tell somebody that's struggling, and you're going to say, hey, guess what? 2 is greater than 10. And they're going to give you a confused look and think you flunked math. I know. But then you're going to explain to them why 2 is greater than 10 and what's the importance of the 2 in this situation and how you're going to be a 2 in someone else's life. You're going to be the one that says that God has got a promise for you. He's got a plan for you. He's got something for you in this situation, and we're going to move from 10s to 2s here at the Life Church. And Moses, he never went to God's promised land, but the 2 men of faith did. And there's a much longer story that you can see, and it's a very interesting way that it even plays out, even after they realized the mistake that they had made, and they try to go into the land just to get their other kind of butts whooped. Not the single T butts, but the other ones. And they get whooped and flee, and then there's a whole situation, and then Moses never makes it in the promised land, but all of a sudden, but God from that moment had declared Joshua and Caleb. And I love this picture. In Joshua chapter 1, verse 6 and 7, so we go through all of Numbers, and we go through so much of the Old Testament, and we get to Joshua. Now it's his turn to take over from Moses. In the very beginning of Joshua's campaign, in this situation, it says, be strong and courageous, for you are the one who will lead these people to possess all the land that I swore to their ancestors I would give them. Be strong and very courageous. Be careful to obey all the instructions Moses gave you. Do not deviate from them. And there's a picture of even what was happening back in Numbers. Do not deviate from them, turning either to the right or the left, and then you will be successful in everything you do. Strong and courageous. I was wrestling with strong and courageous. It's actually 3 times total here in the beginning, also intermixed with the word obey that happens twice, which I don't think is a mistake. And I think too often we like this refrigerator magnet scripture of Joshua 1:9. Be strong and courageous. And we completely disregard where it says, and be careful to obey. In other words, do what God says. And here it's talking about the law, but we can look back in hindsight and see this wasn't just about the law. It was obey to go to the place that God is telling you to go to. Move to the people God's calling you to. Move to the forgiveness that obey whatever it is that God is telling you to do to find the success. And in the midst of that obedience, be strong and courageous. And maybe you're here and it's not a full 10, it's just a partial 10. Because maybe you're here and you're like, well, I have the physical strength to accomplish the thing. I've got the determination and the will of my physical body to move into this place, but you lack courage, being mentally prepared for what God has for you. You're like, oh, I can stand here all day long. But how much can your thoughts handle? And maybe you're like, my brain is fine. My head is fine. I'm optimistic mentally, but my body is weak. I don't know how to even do this. And I don't even speak to simply just the challenge of sickness or disease or brokenness, but I'm forgiving the person in my head, but I don't know how to move towards a restoration of relationship. I don't know how to actually move nearer to that person. I don't know how to move nearer to God. God, I believe that you love me, but how do I feel that you love me? And so I believe that some of us here today might need one or the other. And it says strong and courageous, and some of us are in need of strength, but then some of us are in need of courage, and some of us are in need of both. In Joshua 1:9, this is my command. For the third time, be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid or discouraged, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. I love that he says that. God's been with them the whole time. As they even went back to the wilderness, God was still with them. But what I realize is I want God to be with me wherever I go for sure, but I more so want to be wherever God has for me to be. And God was with them in the wilderness. They missed God's blessing in this situation and went back to the wilderness, and God was still with them providing, even though they weren't where they were supposed to be. And I don't want just to be a wandering, hopeless situation that I know God is still with me. No, I want to be in the midst of the blessing of what God has promised me, what God is giving me, and my obedience to go into the foreign land, to go against the enemy and what he has for me, and to move against giants in this situation, and to move into what God has for me. And can I be in that place and be with God? Because I believe there's something greater there in the midst of my obedience. Too many of us, we're still in the wilderness, being like, oh, I believe God's with me. I believe he's with you too. But how much more of God would you even realize would affect your perspective and an effective realism in the positive sense to truly change what you see and what you believe, because you are where God told you to be. And in that midst, in that moment, you truly experience another level of God that you didn't know could exist. When his love poured over you like a waterfall, completely overtaking everything you possibly knew was possible. And I believe some of us are missing out in this moment because we have lacked obedience, we have lacked courage, and we have lacked strength. And I believe some of us are missing out. God's still for you, God's still with you. But some of us were missing out. And we just need a little bit. And maybe it's the strength within us to change, to be healed. I don't say converted, to be healed from a 10 to a 2. We got some fear that needs some healing. Perfect love casts out all fear. Will we submit to that love? And some of us, we need to be healed from a 10 to 2, and some of us, we just need more 2s in our life. And some of us, we can't kick the 10s out. Doesn't matter if you're married to them. You pray for them. But we need the voice of the 2s to become more powerful. The voice of those who are determined to believe that God is bigger than the circumstance instead of the circumstance bigger than God. It doesn't matter how big the giant is. My God is bigger. Say, my God is bigger. My God is bigger. Heavenly Father, seal this simple but challenging word into our hearts. Heal today what we cannot fix on our own. Our bodies, our minds, everything within us. Heal even, Lord, our relationships. Not to take away the obedience required for us to forgive or love or even move towards. or even set boundaries. But heal our relationships. Heal our perspective in the way that we have been trained or taught or conditioned to see things. That the lenses through which we see of this world are dim and dark. They're tainted in the way of the world. Renew our vision to have a clear sight of the kingdom of heaven on earth today. Renew our minds. And absolutely, give us strength and give us courage. You know the hearts and minds of each and every person here today. And may they also just confess during this time of communion that we move into, or this final song, or with the prayer team after service, but may we also, the strength and courage to literally go to someone else and say, I need prayer. God, do what only you can do. Work miracles here today. And we worship you, and we praise you. In the wonderful name of Jesus. If you're with me, give God a good amen. Amen.